For dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach. And we are very pleased and honored to be joined by Michael Hichborn. And I wouldn't imagine that anybody in our audience does not know who Michael is. But just in case, all right, I want to give Michael a brief introduction. And we're going to have a conversation that that many of you, I would say all of you, need to hear. All of us as Catholics need to hear. Michael Hichborn is the founder and president of the Lepanto Institute and is a well-known public figure in the pro-life movement. He has spent 7.5 years as America Life's league director of the Defend the Faith Project. And in this capacity, he has researched and produced an annual report on organizations receiving grant money from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. This annual report exposing dozens of grantees that are promoting abortion, birth control, homosexuality, and Marxism has led to a nationwide review of the CCHD and a tightening of its guidelines. Michael has also conducted research on Catholic hospital systems that are involved in the performance of abortions and sterilizations. And he wrote a detailed report on abortion and contraception providing organizations receiving money from Catholic relief services and produced a detailed report on Obamacare and its danger to women, preborn babies, and the elderly. In addition to his work as director of Defend the Faith, Michael hosted the online video series, The American Life League Report, and it's a popular video series which features exposés and explanations of the culture of death and its work in our country and, unfortunately, in our church. The videos can be seen at the American Life League Report channel on YouTube. And prior to working at American Life League, Michael helped to open 2 Catholic schools in Fredericksburg, Virginia. He holds a Bachelor of Arts from Christendom College in Political Science and Economics and a master's degree in education from American Intercontinental University. In 2017, Michael became a member of the John Paul II Academy for Human Life and the Family. He lives in Virginia with his wife, Alyssa, and their 7 children. Michael Hichborn, welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe.
Thanks so much for having me. I saw you guys the other day, and when you were talking about how you wanted to have, people to come on to talk about the news that doesn't typically get covered in mainstream media, I knew you guys were the ones I had to talk to.
All right.
We love it. We love it. It's our custom, Michael, to start with a prayer. So, because all good things start with prayer. So in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, was it known that anyone who sought your help or sought your intercession was left unaided? Inspired by this confidence, we fly unto you, a virgin of virgins, our mother. To you we come, before you we stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, but in your clemency hear and answer us. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. So as Joe was saying, the title of our show today is Catholics, Do You Know How You Spend Your Money? Specifically when you give money to organizations within the Catholic Church. And we're going to focus on 2 today, Catholic Relief Services and the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. I think a good place to start is with Catholic Relief Services. And Michael, could you give our listeners just a little background on what they do, what's their mission statement, and how you came across these discrepancies?
Sure. So Catholic Relief Services started in 1943. It was originally called War Relief Services, and its original mission was to go into war-torn Europe during World War II and to help refugees as they were trying to get away from the war. They were starving, that kind of thing. So CRS went in, and this was a very noble mission. It's what it was originally intended to do. But after the war ended, it kind of grew its mission and said, well, we have all these Catholics that are donating to us. What should we do with all this money? And they started going into impoverished areas, and they figured, well, we'd give relief to the victims of war and the victims of natural disasters, still a noble cause, giving them food, shelter, resources, that kind of thing. And then they started taking government money. And when that happened, things kind of shifted from just giving aid to doing development work, which means working to build up the impoverished areas with the idea that you're going to lift them out of poverty somehow. The problem is that not one single area where CRS has worked has poverty been eliminated, and have they actually changed the economic structure of the area. So it's become an industry where they work into these areas, or they walk into these areas, and they do what they call development work, which is basically setting up international United Nations programs or government-sponsored programs And these programs are in many ways related to population control. And that's where we've started to find a lot of the problems. And I discovered the issues with CRS, I guess, back in 2011. This is after I was investigating the Campaign for Human Development, finding that they were giving money to organizations that were promoting abortion, contraception, homosexuality, all that kind of stuff. And while I was conducting this research, one of the things that struck me was that I wanted to know what other agencies are actually involved in the promotion of these horrible things. And I just on an off chance, I was like, well, I wonder what CRS is doing. And I looked at their tax form 990s to see what organizations they were actually giving money to. And what I found was abominable. It was horrifying.
I read the report on the Lepanto Institute website. I was appalled. And I don't know, and that's why we're having this conversation. I don't know how they got away with it for so long. And that's why what you're doing is so important, shedding the light on what many, not all, but many of these people are doing. Michael, let me ask you, with CRS, and on February 13th of 2019, the Lepanto Institute discovered a single document that sparked a pretty massive investigation into a set of multinational projects led by CRS, Catholic Relief Services, that directly involved the promotion of contraception and condoms. Talk to our audience, please, about that document, because in 2012, CRS claimed CRS does not purchase, promote, or distribute condoms. So what's going on here?
So let's go back a bit. The reason CRS has that document saying we don't purchase, promote, or distribute condoms was because in 2011, Father Germain Grisey wrote a series of articles, a couple of different articles, after he discovered that CRS was involved in the promotion of condoms through what they called flip charts. And these flip charts were educational materials that they were using on the ground in various African countries to promote family planning and finding ways to fight against HIV and AIDS, but they include the promotion and instruction on the use of condoms. And they had CRS's logo right there on the documents. And initially, CRS denied that they had anything to do with it. Father Grisey actually had to put out the document and say, nope, here's the document, here's what I got. And then CRS came out with their statement. CRS does not purchase, promote, or distribute condoms. We have this policy where we give full and accurate information on condom use, which is a lie. And we've since revised our policy, and we don't have anything that promotes condoms in any way, shape, or form. So that was what they initially put out. Then in 2012, after this document, or after CRS's claim, LifeSite News found another series of documents that promote condom use. And in 2015, when I founded the Lepanto Institute, I found another program that CRS was actively implementing in Kenya called Shuga, SHUGA, which was a PEPFAR program. It was jointly run by I think what was it, MTV and a few other popular programs, and it was actively promoting condom use. And when I put out my report saying, hey, we found that CRS is promoting condom use through this program, CRS completely denied it. And then I produced documents with CRS's own signatures on there. So these were CRS produced documents. I got it through the Freedom of Information Act, showing that CRS reported, yeah, we implemented this program and that program, and here are the number of people that we reached with these programs. So CRS has been consistently saying, we don't do this, except when we do.
It's funny. I mean, it's always in Africa, and sadly, this is a continent where the Catholic Church is thriving. What about chastity? I mean, this is the mission of the church, is to teach chastity. Sure. Before marriage and even in marriage. I mean, just because you're married doesn't mean you could do anything you want either. There's chastity within the marriage, in accordance with the teachings of the church. We're open to life. You could use natural family planning to regulate the births of your children. Why not promote that? That's what the church teaches.
Yeah. So this is actually the supreme irony, because CRS has its own program called Faithful House. And it actually implements chastity-based education. And it says, you've got to make sure that you are getting away from these temptations and don't engage in this kind of relationship and wait until you're married in order to have children. And, it's actually a pretty good program. That was a CRS produced program. But the thing is, it's only implemented in a very few areas, because if CRS wants to get the government grants, they have to implement the government sponsored programs. They have to implement the programs that the government says, well, this is what we produced, this is what we want you to use. And CRS will say, well, we'll implement it, but we need to tweak it a little bit. So in some cases, what winds up happening is CRS takes the program. It's a horrible program. It promotes all forms of contraception and everything else. They go in and they claim that they strip out all the areas that are problematic. They introduce the people to that program and then they leave. And when they leave, the next agency comes in and implements the full program, and everybody thinks, well, this is a good program because CRS implemented it and we didn't see anything wrong with it before. But then they get the full thing and they're already acclimated and they don't question it. So this is the problem. CRS becomes kind of a gateway drug. But to the report that we did in February, what we found, it started with this one document, and we were looking around to see what CRS was doing, because this one document indicated that they lamented the use of condoms, right? And I thought that's a very strange way of putting it. Why are they upset that there is a lack of condom use in this one area? And it was written under the auspices of something called the 4 Children Project. And I wanted to know, well, what's the 4 Children Project? So I started digging around, and I found that not only is the 4 Children Project actively promoting condom use, but documents that had Catholic Relief Services copyrights that said all rights are reserved to Catholic Relief Services. These documents down at the bottom, they even said that Catholic Relief Services was fully responsible for the contents of those documents. So I was finding all this stuff, and these documents, they were actually promoting condom use. They were saying, here's how to use a condom. This is where you can obtain condoms and that kind of thing. So that led to a much broader, bigger investigative project, which is what that report that we put out last year was all about.
Real quick, let our audience know, Michael, who runs Catholic Relief Services?
So Catholic Relief Services is the official international aid and development agency of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. So it's a USCCB project.
It's funny. I think it comes down to when you get government money. Money, as we all know, we're all adults. Money has strings. That's how it works.
Yeah, nobody's giving you anything.
No one gives you anything. And this is where, I look to orders, I'll use the Missionaries of Charity. They don't even take money from the church. They're fully funded on their own. People give to them. The only thing they ask of the church when they're invited by the bishop is a priest comes to their convent to serve mass and to hear their confessions. They take no money. Right. And what that says to me is they trust in God's providence. We don't need your money. And I've worked with the Missionaries of Charity. If you give them $5 or $5 million, they treat you exactly the same, because we don't need your money.
Well, that's the problem here too, is that in other words, all these organizations that call themselves Catholic, they're awfully worldly, for Catholic organizations. Whereas Joe's pointing out, well, what about Providence? Like Joe said, we by the grace of God, we happen to be close to a couple of different orders. They operate on Providence. Go ahead, Mike.
Let's take it a step further. I mean, as a Catholic organization, you would expect that they would be doing what? Instructing people in the Catholic faith.
Absolutely.
That as a Catholic agency, as a Catholic charitable organization, I mean, what did St. Francis of Assisi do? St. Francis of Assisi lived in abject poverty, and he went out and he preached the gospel. He went into a community. He found people that were poor. He treated and served the people that were poor, and then also preached the gospel. Catholic Relief Services does not preach the gospel. And why? Because government money forbids it from doing so. if Catholic Relief Services is going to implement a government-run program or a government-sponsored program, it's not allowed to preach the faith, which is why they constantly say, well, Catholic Relief Services preaches the faith, and they claim that St. Francis of Assisi said this, preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words. He never said that. St. Francis of Assisi never, ever said that, but that is their mantra. That's how they operate. And
well, I think, because I think money, like what happens is, and this is like, not to get off the subject, what happened with McCarrick.
Oh, yeah.
McCarrick was a moneymaker for the church. So people, I think, because listen, I work in, corporation, I work in banking. I know how money works and I know how the world works. You move people with money. McCarrick made money and he gave money to a lot of people. He also had bad habits, but they were willing to turn the other way, the other cheek to it, because he was a moneymaker.
That's right.
It's the same thing like this, just from the way you're explaining it to me. They do, and they'll rationalize, well, we do a lot of good things.
Yep.
We do this, we do this, we do this. However, we have to make a concession. Well, God doesn't make concessions. You see, we have to trust him. You see, it's like, you have 7 kids. I have 4 kids. I don't know how the heck I do it, to be honest with you. And I'm sure you say the same. But God provides. Yeah. You see, we trust, and this is a smaller microcosm. People have to trust God. God has plenty of money. Like, Benedict Rochelle, we're very close with the Franciscan Friars Renewal. He says, if you want to know that God is behind something you do, start with no money. Like sort of what this apostolate is. This is kind of, it came from a Franciscan friar. He encouraged us to start this. We have $3,000 worth of equipment. All of it was given to us. We didn't spend a dime, not a dime. So, I mean, God provides. We have it's if you ask me, it's a lack of trust, Michael. It comes down to that. And people, it's like you're in business. They make concessions. People say, well, we're doing good here, but we got to make this concession because it keeps the wheel turning. That's what they did with McCarrick. It seems like it's the same thing now.
There's a Sicilian proverb that every new child comes with a loaf of bread under each arm.
I love it. I love it.
And I'll tell you, it's so true. I have found that every child that we have had, something has happened. Our finances have changed so that we could accommodate the needs of our growing family. It's always happened. And we've never had any trust issues with whether God is going to be able to provide for this or provide for that. We just simply accept that if God is going to plant a seed, if he is going to expand our garden, then he is also going to expand its fruits.
From a nefarious point of view, and I don't want to pick on the church in Germany, but you have to take 10% of your earnings and designate it to a particular church, whether it's your Methodist, a Lutheran, or Catholic. That is a brilliant move. I've thought about this. And why? Because you're controlling the church.
Right.
Because they're giving you money, basically. You're giving them money. So you could control them. But at the same time, religion brings good things to your society. It helps to build a quasi-moral society. There are social services that are provided for free. So it's a brilliant move. You're basically saying, like, it's almost like you're bribing them, but you're not. Like, do you know what I'm saying? And then it gets in people's heads and it controls them because money controls people.
Let me go. I want to just ask you this. Now, let's be charitable for a second. Like when it comes to CRS, like you guys are talking about, obviously, some people don't have a lack of trust, let's say. All right. And we should encourage people who are Catholic, trust in God. Okay. That's what St. Benedict did. That's what, like you said, like St. Francis did. In other words, these guys had nothing. All right. And yet they built these beautiful monasteries through their own labor. There's those that maybe lack a trust in God, Michael. But then there's those who come to the table who I'm sure I'm not off base by saying they have an agenda. Now, what am I asking you here? Because I want to know, and for our audience out there, where does homosexuality come into play here? Because one of the handouts you discovered contains the real agenda in maintaining a difference between sex and gender, which is the indoctrination of homosexual and transgender ideologies. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So as we were going through all of these documents related to the 4 Children Project. And we were finding that there was this promotion of condom use. We found several documents that included the promotion of condom use in the homosexual community, which so you're taking this and you're now you're not just promoting contraception, you're promoting contraception and a moral abomination. One document was titled HIV Information Training Manual for Adolescent Girls and Young Women. And again, this is a CRS produced document. It has a CRS copyright. It says that CRS is responsible for the production of this document. And there's one portion where it says it's kind of an exercise. And it asks the question, is this a risk activity? And it shows a picture and it gives different examples, like sitting on a toilet seat. Is this a risk activity? Are you going to get AIDS by doing this? And the people participating in this are supposed to answer yes or no. One of the examples is it's sex without a condom. So is sex without a condom a risk activity? And the picture that it has associated with it are 3 dancing couples. The one in the foreground is clearly a man and a woman. And then in the background, it's kind of muted, and so you don't really pay attention. But if you look carefully, the one in the background to the left is 2 men. And so what they're subtly promoting is this idea of homosexuality. And then there's another document, HIV Sensitive Child Protection. And on page 61, they have this handout. So it's an exercise, it's a training manual. And they have these handouts for these various exercises. And the handout is titled "The Difference Between Sex and Gender." And in this section, it tries to delineate that there's a difference between sex and gender. First, it identifies sex like this: something we are born with that helps us identify as a person, as male or female. A male person physically differs from a female. Being a male or female is a natural phenomenon that we cannot change except through surgery. So now they're giving into this idea that you can actually physically change someone's sex. No, if you paint a rock with gold paint, it doesn't change the rock into a lump of gold. It's just covered over with gold paint. And the same thing's true with sex reassignment surgery. You're not reassigning the sex of the person. You're just changing the outward appearance.
Yeah, it's amazing. And by the way, just so everybody knows, okay, we have this conversation now. In the near future, we're all going to get shipped off to the gulag for having this conversation. We know that. Well, E. Michael Jones makes the point all the time. Okay, he says, the call them what you want, the LGBT rage mob, okay? They are, in his words, they are the new proxy warriors in this culture war.
Yep.
You can't say anything. Just like you're saying, Michael, right now. There's a difference between sex and gender and all this propaganda that they try to ram down our throats. Most nefariously, the propaganda that they try to ram down our children's throats in the public schools, okay? You can't say anything about it. You can't say anything. Right now, you'll get deplatformed from YouTube if you talk about the election. But right alongside it is, if you're having these types of conversations, they'll drop the hammer on you too, and that's going to be tame compared to what they might do in the future. And that's really what we got to watch out for. That to me is like what that abortion, of course. That's the major battlefront. In this culture war, and we have to stand up for the truth. We have to, and this is why this is a real disgraziad. That's Italian for disgrace, Michael. The real disgraziad move on the part of some of these groups is you call yourself Catholic, act Catholic,
right, and
do your work with only those who promote the teachings of the Catholic Church, or at the very least, don't contradict them.
Yeah,
but it comes down to saving souls, because obviously that's the most important thing. I mean, we as Catholics, we have to have a preferential option for the poor. It's important, but at the same time, it's more important to save a soul. And the teachings of the church lead to the truth, and the truth is Christ. You see, again, we're starting to get into our own minds, and like as a greater church, I think we have to get back to basics. I have always found when we get out of the boat and we trust God, what we do is exponentially better. You'll do more. I think it comes down simply to a lack of faith, and people are simply just rationalizing it. You see this, and I don't want to get into specifics, but you see this even with some bishops.
Oh yeah.
They rationalize. They say, well, listen, I got these schools, like, I have to fund this. I have to fund this. Stop trusting in man. We have to start trusting in God, and he'll always provide. That's what this says to me, as a regular guy.
Well, and like I've been saying ever since I started researching Catholic Relief Services, the problem with their model is that they go around and they're a bunch of do-gooders. But at the end of the day, what they're doing is they're feeding bellies but starving souls. When Jesus took pity on the multitude and he wanted to feed them, and the apostles said, we only have a few loaves of bread and a couple of fish, and he multiplied the loaves. Okay, so it was a true multiplication because he wanted to feed them. But then what happened? He preached. He preached to them. He gave them the truth. And then the very next day, they all came out and they went looking for him, but he went away. Why? Because they wanted to follow the source of food. When I'm outside, we have chickens, and I go outside and I'll feed the chickens in the morning, and then I'll go and take care of some of the things for the day. Whenever I come outside, you know what those chickens do? They follow me around the yard because they're expecting me to feed them. If we had the same kind of relationship with Christ, where we are expecting Christ to feed us at every turn, well, then all we're doing is looking for something to fill our bellies without actually filling our souls. And that's the problem with CRS. They're starving souls.
The other thing I also about CRS, and Michael, we want you to also enlighten our audience here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. We're joined by Michael Hichborn, and as the title says, do you know, Catholics, how your money is being spent? So we want you to try to get into some of the players, some of the organizations that CRS is forwarding our money to basically promote these evils. But I do want to make one point before you do that, Michael. It strikes me as I would assume that CRS does a large majority of their work in Africa. Okay. And I just, for the life of me, I don't understand. This might be a different conversation. I don't understand how we call them out, not just CRS, but all these organizations, on their blatant racism, because they honestly believe that the problem in the world, especially when you're doing this in Africa, there's too many black and brown people in Africa. So we either have to kill them through abortion, or we have to limit the population growth through contraception. I don't know how on earth we don't call that out for the blatant example of racism that it is.
Well, honestly, it goes back to the formation of USAID, which is the government agency where most of the money comes in for the projects of these aid and development agencies. USAID was created in the 1960s, and it was codified in 1966. And one of the founding documents of USAID specifies that in order to receive aid from the federal government, the aid, or the country that receives this aid, has to produce reports showing how they are working to reduce their fertility rates. So it was created as a population control program. USAID actually uses the phrase population control in its founding documents. And CRS is partnering with USAID to implement a lot of these programs. These agencies that we're talking about, like CARE International, Population Services International, Save the Children, Mercy Corps, think about your favorite international aid and development group. It's probably also getting money from USAID, and that is the problem. They are taking government money from a program that was created for population control, and that's what we're implementing.
But it's also, how many Catholics contracept? That it comes down to that. It's probably a lot, actually. So, do we even believe as a church what the church teaches, in her wisdom? You see, I think this is another reason why people will just write it off. They write it off because, and this is why, when's the last time you heard a contraception homily? I have never heard that, actually. I don't know if I ever
You
have.
barely hear abortion.
I mean,
hear
never
about
mind
it.
contraception. People will leave. They'll walk right out the door. But this is a teaching of the church for our benefit, because love gives, it doesn't take. To
Right.
love somebody, you give of yourself completely. And in doing that, you have a sacramental marriage. And this is what feeds our marriage with grace, because we're, you know, if you're doing what the church tells you, you're living a sacramental marriage. How many marriages aren't sacramental because they're contracepting?
Well, what Joe and along the lines of what Joe's talking about, Michael. So Catholic Relief Services obviously should be, as you mentioned, okay, taking the example of Christ. Yes, you're feeding people, but you also have to preach in fairness to them. And you're the one that's investigating this. Have you reached out to them?
Oh,
Have you
absolutely.
reached out to them to ask them, and if so, what kind of response did you get?
So I've had actually a number of meetings with the highest people at Catholic Relief Services. I've met with their CEO. I've met with the bishop chairman of Catholic Relief Services. I have sent letters. I've been in regular communication with some of these people, and they are in constant denial. Every time I produce a new report or I come out with information, they look at it and they say, well, we looked into it and it's just not that, you know, what you're saying isn't true. They never give me any specifics. They never counter the things that I'm finding, but they just say, well, that's not what we did, or that's not what happened, or that's not, you know, they always deny without countering.
Michael, not to get angry, but what about when you show them the document and it says CRS right on it? I mean, that's kind of plain as day. That would float in a court of law.
Oh, yeah.
So what about when you say, but guys, this says CRS and this says contraception? This doesn't go together. What do they say when you present them this irrefutable evidence?
So in my meeting, and I've done that a couple of times where I would say, okay, what about this document? And what about this? Well, I'm not familiar with that one. I'm going to have to go talk to the department head who is responsible for this. And we'll get in touch with the people who are on the ground and try and figure out what happened. And then they never get in touch with me again. They never talk about it again.
Is this still going on?
Oh my goodness, yes. So in this report that I put together last year, one of the things that I found was that in two countries, Cameroon and in Nigeria, Catholic Relief Services created health referral networks. Now, a health referral network, let me kind of explain. What they're doing is they're saying, okay, we're going to go into this area and we're going to create a referral network among all of these different agencies to try and make sure that people have the resources that they need in order to address their personal needs. So if, for instance, somebody needs to know how to access a bank and get a loan and that kind of thing, well, here's the loan agency. This is who you go to. If somebody needs dentistry, well, here's the local dentist. Here's their people in our network. You go to them. Well, included in these referral networks, they have organizations that are partnered with Planned Parenthood that are promoting abortion, calling for the legalization of abortion in these two countries where it's illegal. And they're also, they're distributing and promoting all forms of contraception. And just to give a couple of examples. So in Cameroon, Catholic Relief Services created this one health referral network, and it included a group called Renata, R-E-N-A-T-A. And what we discovered is that CRS themselves was giving direct referrals to Renata for sexual and reproductive health services. Renata is on the record as an organization that helps girls obtain illegal abortions. They fight for the legalization of abortion, and they distribute all forms of contraception. CRS was making direct referrals to them. We have that on government records. We have that on CRS's own records. We know for a fact, yes, this was going on. CRS also included them in this health referral network. There's another group called SWAA Literal, which is passing out brochures, advertising, and encouraging the use of all forms of contraception. CRS included them in their referral network for reproductive health services. Another group, Horizons Femmes, is distributing condoms and performing condom demonstrations. Another one, Morenzo, is distributing condoms. CRS included those groups in their health referral network in Cameroon. In Nigeria, CRS implemented a project called SMILE, and they partnered. One of their primary implementing partners is a group called Action Aid. which advocates for safe abortions and is promoting all forms of contraception. And they also created a health referral network. And in their health referral network, they included one group called Family Healthcare Foundation, which received funding from Planned Parenthood for the promotion and distribution of an injectable contraception called Cyanopress. While it was working with CRS for the SMILE project, they were also receiving money from Planned Parenthood to implement promotion and distribution of Cyanopress. And they were doing it in the exact same program areas as CRS's SMILE project, which means they were using leverage with CRS's SMILE project in order to introduce young girls to the Cyanopress, which they were then handing out. Another group called the Girls Power Initiative, also included in CRS's referral network, is on the record advocating for the legalization of abortion, and they also work with Planned Parenthood. This is crazy. Their foundress, a lady named Bene Madanugu, actually wrote an article for Catholics for Choice. Listen to what she wrote. Governments are not making concerted efforts to help women gain access to services essential to addressing their sexual and reproductive health. In many parts of the developing world, a high percentage of pregnancy-related deaths result from abortion complications because too many poor governments yield to political pressure from the Holy See against safe abortion services. So not only is this lady advocating for abortion, but she's fighting directly against the Vatican for calling for an end and cessation to abortion. And CRS included them in a health referral network. And there are several others, but that's kind of a good example of the kind of organizations that CRS is partnering with and who they are introducing very vulnerable people to and telling them, oh, you can trust them. You can go to them. If you have problems or if you have a need in this particular area, these people will take care of you. That's just insidious. That's like saying, well, it's okay to worship the devil sometimes as long as he helps you out with your, your impoverishment. What?
Yeah. Doesn't make any sense at all.
Have you brought this up to the bishops? Because, what has been their response?
Zippo. So the bishops either do not care or they do not want to hear it. And in many cases, I think it's the latter. They just don't want to hear it. They will turn to CRS, and CRS will send out an internal memo saying that Michael Hichborn, he's at it again, and he's just not on board with what we're trying to do to help the poor. And it's too bad, because we've tried to meet with him a few times, and he just doesn't get it. And so then the bishops will say, okay, well, shrug. It's just Michael Hichborn being cranky again, and CRS says everything's fine and not to believe him. So I won't.
And that really, and we're going to move on from CRS, Mike. We're going to get into this CCHD, but very informative.
Yes,
all right?
And very detailed.
Very detailed, okay? And you could, and we're going to talk about CCHD because we have about maybe 20, 25 minutes left in the hour. But important, Lepanto Institute. And I'm going to tell everybody, we're going to have Michael back because there's things that he writes and you get in his emails from Lepanto, the Catholic Week in Review particularly, where you could keep abreast of these things. Lepanto Institute. Get on their subscriber list so you get Michael's email at least once a week, amongst other things. And Michael, we'll probably have you back to talk about Father Martin because I loved your Catholic Week in Review from last week. But these are the things that really bother Joe and I. Joe and I, so many times, Michael, we've been doing this now for about 2 years, as Joe mentioned earlier, at the encouragement of a great priest, the Franciscan Friar of the Renewal, and we really try in our hearts to be charitable. We go out of our way because we know we're a couple of hot-headed Italians, Mike. Sometimes we could come across as uncharitable, so we try, as Christ would want us to make sure we're telling the truth, but right. we're speaking the truth, with charity. But these are the things that bother me, that the bishops, let's say, because we know you're doing the same thing. And for the bishops not to get, not just kind of shrug their shoulders or give like a half-hearted response, to come out against them and say to CRS, hey, like you would call them into the back room, oh, let's go back here. We got to have a meeting about what you guys are doing and who you guys are funneling money to, because this all has to come to an end. It's a shame that that's not happening. But let me leave it there because we do want to move on. We want to get to CCHD because now that's a problem with CRS. Correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, with promoting, obviously, those things that are intrinsically evil and contrary to Catholic teaching, abortion, contraception, homosexuality. But in turning to the CCHD, for those of you who don't know, that's the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. Okay. Now they're involved in things that they're not supposed to be involved in either, but that's more in the political arena. So
Right.
Tell our audience briefly here at the front line with Joe and Joe, who is the CCHD? Who are they, and what are they supposed to be doing?
So the Catholic Campaign for Human Development was created in 1970 for the specific purpose of providing grants to Saul Alinsky's community organizing groups. And for those of you who don't know who Saul Alinsky was, he wrote Rules for Radicals and Reveille for Radicals, which was basically socialist agitation in order to perpetuate class warfare. The whole idea was that they were going to continue to agitate in a community in order to keep destabilizing the way people do government, ostensibly under the guise of saying, well, you know, we just want to make sure that democracy works in our area and the people have a say and blah, blah, blah. But ultimately what it boils down to is just agitprop, communist, socialist agitation. So CCHD was created in 1970 in order to finance Saul Alinsky's community organizing groups. And it was done by Cardinal Bernardin, who was, he's well known as a homosexual. He's well known as, he had ties with Freemasonry and other very serious issues. And when he was the head of the USCCB, he was able to get it introduced as a national collection. Well, what CCHD, it was originally just called Campaign for Human Development. Throughout the 70s and 80s, people would research the organizations that were getting money from the CHD, and they would complain, saying, hey, look, this group is promoting abortion. This group is promoting socialism. This group is promoting things that are against church teaching. And they would CHD would consistently come back and say, oh, we researched that and it's not true. And they were constantly fighting against people that were saying, we don't want to give money to these groups because they're doing grave moral evils. So in the 90s, because their reputation was so besmirched, they added the word Catholic to it. So they became the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. Again, this organization does not give money to organizations that are Catholic. It gives money to organizations that are secular and interfaith, which means they're not tied to any one particular religion, and they do it so that they can promote agitation groups that go out and fight, allegedly fight poverty. They do not fund soup kitchens. They do not fund shelters. They do not fund organizations that are providing clothing to the poor. No direct services. Only political agitation. That's in their rules. So that's what the CCHD is in a nutshell.
How did they add the word Catholic to it and get away with it? Because I mean, just like a college is in the domain of a bishop, and the bishop could take the Catholic name off of a college if he chose to. How did they do that and get away with it? I mean, where are they incorporated out of?
Because it is the official anti-poverty program of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. It is a USCCB program.
So the way they fight poverty then is to give money to radical organizations like Acorn or the Democrat Party. So that's what they'll say, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. We give money to organizations that are going to elect people who are going to take our tax dollars and put it into welfare or put it into food stamps. So that's their version of fighting poverty. We all know it's a lot of BS, mm-hmm. Okay, but that's their version of fighting poverty. I don't get, for the life of me, I understand there's liberal bishops. I get it, okay? I don't agree with them on their seamless garment nonsense, okay? I get it. But guys, really? You're asking the faithful to fund this nonsense? So let me ask you, Michael. You have we talk a little bit about their basically lying when they say they don't support or they don't support partisan politics, or they don't get involved in partisan politics. Blow that up a little bit for us.
Right. So back in October, we put together a report on a network of organizations that they fund, and it's one of the oldest networks that they've been financing since they started. It's currently called Faith in Action. It used to be called the PICO Network, PICO. And again, the PICO Network was formed back in the 1970s. CCHD has given it its network members lots and lots and lots of money over the years. It's one of its favorite organizations. Well, I've investigated members of the PICO Network for a long time and exposed them as promoting abortion, contraception, homosexuality, Marxism, you name it, and we've found it. But what we found in October is that Faith in Action, which again used to be called PICO, Faith in Action was actively involved in electioneering on behalf of Joe Biden. We found their project called Live Free, which is a national project belonging specifically to Faith in Action, on their Twitter feed, on their Facebook feed, calling for people to vote for Joe Biden, to get Donald Trump out of office. They called for people to finance the election for Joe Biden. That's a forbidden activity according to CCHD grant guidelines. It's also a forbidden activity according to 501c3 tax exempt regulations. So Faith in Action was in violation both of 501c3 activities and in violation of CCHD grant guidelines.
So obviously, and let's just be clear, if those same groups were supporting, let's say for argument's sake, the Orange Man, okay, I guarantee you they got a knock on the door from the IRS.
Oh, absolutely. Not only that, but CCHD would drop them like a hot rock,
After your report went out, I mean, you confronted them with this. They basically said this was it was false and rooted in a hostile reaction to the call of transformative justice.
Whatever that means.
That? What is that? Formative.
Yeah, I mean that's just one of those leftist slogans. Transformative justice. I heard Obama one time talk about redistributive justice. Okay, that just means taking more of our money to give them more power at the end of the day. But go ahead, Joe. I cut you off.
What are they doing? They're claiming that they're building bridges with regard to Dr. Martin Luther King's vision of the beloved community. That they're basically helping to fight racism. What's their position on that?
So originally, Faith in Action, the PICO Network, they claimed that their primary mission was to build the beloved community, which was this idea that all communities can come together to work for a common cause, to have basically hold hands and hug each other, and we all love each other so that we can have this utopia. And part of that was fighting racism. Now, their fight against racism is laughable, considering I have on video the PICO California co-director, this guy named Ben McBride, and he's sitting there, he's railing against racist America. America's racist and it's an inherently racist system. And then he referred to the United States government as the Jew-United States government. So at the same time that they're claiming that they're fighting racism, this guy just issues a racial slur against the entire country. And I'm sitting there going, so if that was its original mark, was that it was fighting racism, but this guy's clearly a racist. Oh, and by the way, he's racist against white people because he's spreading all kinds of lies about white America, about Republican. He calls the entire Republican Party a racist system, in an integrally racist system. So, you get this kind of, I don't even know, it's a screed from Ben McBride, a co-director of PICO California. It's not fighting racism, it's fanning the flames. So, but at the same time, they say that they're working towards this beloved community, and we want to have everybody, working together and really just getting along and being peaceful. But this guy is calling for rebellion. He's calling for the burning down of buildings. He actually refers to the burning down of the police station in Minneapolis as Moses talking to the burning bush, that the burning bush was God speaking to Moses. And so this burning police station was somehow God speaking to the country.
That's where when I read this stuff, Michael, or I watch some of the stuff, or I read stuff on Lepanto Institute, I get a really good laugh. Like if I'm having a not so good day, I get a really good laugh at it. So, but go ahead. The police station is the burning bush. Did you know that, Joe? God was speaking through the burning police station.
And you submitted this to Faith in Action. What did they say? This is what I want to know. I mean, like, these are, some very serious claims. What's their response?
Real quick, though, before you respond, I just want to say, but then they're also, I want you to respond also, but they're also heavily involved in abortion too, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
That too. So I didn't actually reach out to Faith in Action. I sent the report to CCHD because, I always send my reports to members of the USCCB, and the USCCB, of course, they scrambled and after like 2 weeks of thorough investigation, they said, "Oh, we looked into this, and the Lepanto Institute's just angry, and they don't like what we do, and they're spreading these malicious lies, and Faith in Action didn't do all these things, and Faith in Action is such a good organization, and oh, well, there were a few blurred lines and maybe a misstep here or there, but they didn't actually have a relationship with this organization that's a political action group calling for the election of Joe Biden, calling for the election of all these other Democrat candidates. They don't have a formal relationship with that. We only fund organizations that are doing good pro-life Catholic work, and I don't know what they're complaining about." That was the basic response from CCHD. Of course, it's all hogwash.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame. It's actually heartbreaking. I mean, I always say this: money controls. We talked about this at the beginning of the interview. It turns the wheel. People, and that's why we, titled this show, "Do you know where your money is going?" And I know on your, your website for Lepanto, you actually have a page. It's like a charity page, and you give grades based upon, like, do they support abortion? Do they support?
Well, we should encourage everybody.
To look
and we
at
are
that.
encouraging Lepanto Institute. Subscribe, go to the website. That is a very, very useful thing. So let's say, for argument's sake, Joe and I have said a million times, we're going to, God will see what we give, all right, from our hearts. We choose not to give to certain things. CCHD, I haven't given to for quite some time. I don't know if I ever have. And unfortunately, I don't give to the bishop's annual appeal. I'm not beating up on all the bishops. Some bishops, if I lived in their diocese, I would give to them, all right? But I'm not. But we give to the orders, okay, Franciscans, missionaries of charity. But I would say go to Lepanto Institute, everybody who wants to give, let's say, to a particular charity, because Michael grades them. That's what they do at the Lepanto, or one of the things they do at Lepanto Institute. He's grading all the charitable organizations and keeping you away from the ones that we need to stay away from.
And that's a service.
Real service.
Because, again, we're Catholic, and we're not just giving our hard-earned money away. No, I'm not doing that. I'm going to give it to things that are going to promote the faith. To promote the faith. That's the idea. And this is, I think, a very, very important service that you provide to the faithful, Michael, and people should really, really look into it. Because, listen, a lot of times, the people that are giving money, they're not rich. And they work hard, and we make sacrifices, deep sacrifices, to give that money. And it should be used to promote the teachings of the Church of Jesus Christ, the Catholic Church.
Michael, we got just a couple minutes left, but I don't know if we've actually asked this question yet, but let me just say, are the bishops being lied to by these organizations? I mean, I'm sure that we probably could, unfortunately, say that some bishops maybe are like you said, they shrug their shoulders. But are these organizations actually blatantly lying to many of the bishops?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, I've seen some of their internal memos, and I've seen what they've actually sent to the bishops to say, "Oh, no, there's no problem here. This isn't true. This isn't true." They are blatantly lying to the bishops. There's no doubt about it. They know what they're doing. They know what these organizations are doing. I've met with CCHD personnel. I had many meetings with Ralph McLeod, the executive director of the CCHD, and I would point to him after conducting months of research with a 200 and some odd page report, going page after page after page, showing him all of the evidence. Of course, he's sitting there tight-lipped going, I'll look into that. And then we put out the report, and the next thing I know, I see a memo going out saying, "We looked into this, and this is all lies. None of this is true. Don't worry about it." Well, how are you going to sit there and just call me a liar without actually addressing anything that I wrote?
No, I agree.
That's not right.
It's sad, and it's sad. it's to be honest with you, it's heartbreaking, actually.
Well, I think that's why what we're doing is important, because if the more people are aware of this, remember, Michael, most people are not aware of this.
Yep.
And that's why these, like we might reach 5,000 people or something, let's say with this interview, but you never know where it's being shared and who people are talking to. People need their consciousness raised when it comes to things like this. So if we make them aware, then perhaps some of the money might start drying up, and then maybe, number one, these organizations will be reined in, okay, if not completely defunded by the USCCB, and the USCCB will take some real definitive action, some really strong action. So at least at this point, it's like Joe said, it is sad, but that's why we have to keep having these conversations. That's why we keep having to inform our brothers and sisters as to what these organizations are doing.
And I think sometimes people, like Catholic folks, like they're reluctant to call out bad behavior. If it's bad, you have to call it out. It's like anything, because things don't get corrected unless, we do it respectfully, but you call it out. Listen, everyone is held to the law. And frankly, you're held to a higher standard if you're in the church, if you're a bishop, if you're a priest. Frankly, even if you're a layman, a Catholic, God's law is higher than the law. And we're all going to be judged, and listen, we have to tell the truth. And if people aren't doing the right thing, you got to speak up.
Point it out.
You got to speak up.
We're coming to the end. Michael, give any final thoughts for our audience. And obviously we're going to have you back on the show because we can have these conversations, not just about CRS and CCHD. I want to have you on to talk about Seton Hall, because that's my alma mater. I want to, we need to have that conversation, and maybe start picking apart a little bit of what's being called authentic American Catholicism, embodied in the people like Father James Martin and Sister Simone Campbell. That's a conversation for another day. That's a different kind of corruption. But any final thoughts for our audience about the conversation today?
So the number one thing that I would talk to, that I would like to draw attention to, is that the problem with organizations like Catholic Relief Services, the Campaign for Human Development, is that the idea of charity has been converted into an industry. And what I mean is that we are no longer looking at charity as a work. It's something that you do out of love. The word charity comes from caritas, which means it's a giving love, unreciprocal. And what Catholic Relief Services is doing is they're making oodles of money off of the idea that they're helping the poor. The CEO of Catholic Relief Services makes $500,000 a year to help the poor. I mean, that's disgusting. And the same thing is happening with Campaign for Human Development, all of these other organizations that claim to be Catholic, but are actually just pushing this idea of social charity. It's humanitarianism. It's not charity. And if you'd like to know more about what we do, and you want to know more about these organizations, I highly encourage you, go to our website, which is LEPANTO, lepantoin.org. Just come to our website, sign up for our newsletter, take a look at our charities report. You have the little drop-down menu for articles. You can look at our articles. We're always populating it with new articles about all kinds of stuff, and that's what we do.
And for everybody to know, if you want to read more in-depth or read the reports that we're talking about, okay, you could, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, you could also find them on the website too.
Yep.
Awesome. And Michael, any social media you'd like for people to know where they can find you?
Oh, they can find me on Facebook, mostly, just me personally. You can also follow our our Lepanto Institute Facebook page. So just look up Lepanto Institute on Facebook, or look up Michael Hichborn on Facebook, and that's where I'm most active.
All right, awesome. And everybody out there, you can follow the Front Line with Joe and Joe on both on Facebook and YouTube for now, till they drop the hammer on us.
Right,
we're working on being on other. In fact, we are on other platforms. And we're going to be weaning off Facebook and YouTube. But please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Share this video. Go to the Lepanto Institute. Get informed. Get involved. That's what we need to do as Catholics. So, Michael Hichborn, thanks for joining us here. We'll have you back soon, and we'll cause trouble again. All right. Hopefully over the next couple of weeks. And remember, everybody, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation, it's going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.